test it.
All right, here we are, episode 5, Higher Dimensions, with the living legend himself,
Oh, sheesh.
Frank.
Big things.
Pleasure to be here.
So, what's going on, man? Welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thank you. I've been checking out your earlier versions of podcasts. I like what you guys are putting out.
Yeah, how
There's
come?
some great conversations here. You explore topics that I'm interested in, and that you guys have a nice natural flow between you two. And,
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
yeah, you hit on some interesting points, and it kind of organically happens. I love it.
Yeah, it helps that Jack's my best friend.
Yeah,
Makes it
yeah.
easy, but
Know each other's souls.
we know each other well. We've traveled many lifetimes together.
It's possible.
Interesting.
So, I heard you were getting fucked up by the algorithms. What's going on with that?
Yeah, not fucked up necessarily, but I was just saying how the algorithm seems to know me better than any friend or any, acquaintance could know me.
Yeah.
It seems. You log on to whatever Instagram and it's like it just knows everything that you love, like by every degree of what you love, and it's just interesting to sort of watch that like evolution of the relationship between you and the algorithm.
Yeah.
Do you use ChatGPT yet? Are you using that?
I haven't jumped on that yet, but I hear you talk about it like every day.
So ChatGPT will literally like get to know you, and it'll change the way it interacts with you based on your personality. So it starts to really feel like it's one of your friends.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know.
In my case, it's like my therapist.
I should start checking out ChatGPT for another therapist. That sounds
Yeah.
like
ChatGPT is probably a better therapist than most people.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have an uncle who works for Google, and we spoke about a few times about the process of how Google learns your tendencies and the many different things about you, and how over time it starts to detail its responses and specifically altered to the questions you might ask and the answers you might seek. So if I were to ask a question logged into your Google account right now, the results might differ from what I would ask the same exact question in my Google. It kind of has this, I guess you could say, like
biases.
Yeah, biases and self-informing aspect to it.
The funny thing is,
confirmation bias.
Have you ever heard of the Wingmakers?
No.
No. Did I show you the Wingmakers?
Is that like some sort of art?
There's like activational art, but there's this whole story, and supposedly it's a fake story. When it first came out, it was like a real story about a time capsule. And there was like a crystal in the time capsule. They didn't know how to use the crystal, but there was also like this whole story that came along with the time capsule. And like this person was like pretending to be, or maybe he is, some like high level government official who had all this information about the future. And in the future there's this AI that runs off of a program called like Olin technology, and it's the same kind of algorithm that only gives you the things that you want. Right? So everyone is like really happy and no one has to work anymore, but like the world is very like stale and stagnant and like it's like kind of lifeless
Like
in a
void
way.
of creativity.
Right.
Yeah, it's void of creativity, exactly.
Reminds me of what's it? Soma, was that from 1984? There was a drug that every citizen was prescribed that just made you elated, and you felt like you had all your needs met.
Oh wow,
and
it's called soma. That's interesting. That's what the yogis eat, the soma mushroom.
Right, interesting.
Yeah.
I guess derived from the word somatic, like of the body.
Okay. Yeah. Like if you want to go into the void, you've got to eat the soma mushroom, and then I think it's a mushroom. I don't really know.
Interesting. That's one I haven't tried.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard Sadhguru talking about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nobody has to say.
Yeah. If you guys know where I could get that,
So
Hit us up.
yeah, send us a DM.
it seems like the algorithm is or could be looked at as a reflection of the mind in a lot of ways. You know, like you look on whatever social media you want to look at and it's showing you things and it's like there's some things where it's like almost like a dark corner of your mind where it's like, ooh, I don't want to go there. You know, there's like a fight, like, oh, that's messed up.
Right.
And there's like you could cater it to kind of nurture your life or to really like tamper with, you know, your state.
Right. Yeah, I've realized that like over the years I've been very intentional about the links and content that I click on Meta, I guess, both Facebook and Instagram. And my feed scrolling through is interesting things. You know, it's a lot about science, spirituality, like motivational aspects, you know, some political conversation on there, but not very polarized. So it's, you know, it's met what I have been searching for in some ways, which is nice. And, you know, the same thing happens with the advertisements that they use your metadata for, which I feel strangely about, because in some ways I'm like, this is great. Like, I have definitely purchased a few things off of both Facebook and Instagram from advertisements because it knows what I'm looking for. It suggests like clothing that's kind of style that I would like, different like health devices and things like that.
100%.
Yeah.
The only missing piece of my workout for the past like maybe year has been I don't have a pull-up bar in my house. And they advertise to me a pull-up bar every day for like the past since I moved into my new place, and I like just today bought it, and I was just like,
what could this guy really use?
How did they know that the one thing that I was missing? Like they didn't advertise a ball, a medicine ball. They didn't advertise a million other things they could advertise. It was the one thing that I didn't. You know, I didn't have in my workout.
You must have had a conversation about it.
Dude, it's
you know, I originally thought it was just like conspiracy ideology that it's listening to you, but now it's pretty much proven fact that, you know, through certain apps, the permissions you give it is actively listening to you all the time. And certain cue words it will use to inform the advertisements you get. And when I first moved into this new apartment around late September, my landlord was installing a mini split unit. It's like an air conditioner heater that you install into the wall. And I started getting, I guess we were speaking about it, and I started getting ads for mini splits all the time. But what's strange is it even detailed the exact brand that he was using, and I can't ever remember speaking about the brand that he purchased. So I'm wondering if like it tied together our metadata, saw that he purchased that specific brand of mini split and advertised that one to me. It's really interesting and kind of scary. And
did you take any pictures?
It's scary how much I am about it.
Did you take pictures in your apartment?
I did, but none of the mini split. No pictures of that area. So, yeah, it's really strange, and like I said, it's unsettling. But at the same time, you know, it's serving my need for. If I had a need for advertisements, it's giving me the type of advertisements I would like. You know, so it's strange, but I think we're all kind of fall into this trap of allowing our data to be utilized and accessed by whatever apps we're using very blindly.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, there's definitely some Big Brother aspect to it. But I think it really reflects the ego. You know, this is what the ego does. The ego only likes things that remind it of itself.
Right.
So it'll want to be with people that remind, like, I only want to be with people who remind me of me. That's basically what the ego is doing. So it's doing the same thing with products.
That's
know,
what
it's like
Facebook and Instagram show you. You know, you express your opinion over a long enough period of time, you'll realize that those in your newsfeed or those people that you see posting are the ones who share that same opinion.
Right.
Because it's a reflection. You know, it's this confirmation bias that social media sets up in order for you to feel like you are in your tribe. You know, humans are a very tribal species, and this kind of enhances our tribalism, but it also polarizes us and divides us in many ways.
And
it's hard to escape from.
It also keeps you the same. Like there's no. I think it might, stunt people's growth in a way. I think I was convinced to buy a motorcycle on YouTube.
You mentioned.
For sure. For sure.
All of a sudden, other folks in your circle were also buying motorcycles.
My friend Matt, who's the same age as me, all of a sudden we both have motorcycles. Mm-hmm. I'm like, how did this happen? I never, I rode motorcycles when I was a teenager, but I didn't own a motorcycle for over 20 years, and all of a sudden I'm owning motorcycles. I bought 2 motorcycles.
Right.
So then I snapped out of it. And I stopped watching motorcycle videos. I sold my motorcycles. I'm like, what the fuck just happened to me?
You became a motorcycle guy for a minute.
Yeah, I became a biker.
Yeah. Biker Mark.
Yeah. Well, I was into sport bikes, so I don't want to.
You weren't a Harley guy. You were more like a Kawasaki.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I had a Yamaha, and then I had a Suzuki, but some guy told me I looked like someone from Sons of Anarchy, and I was super offended by it. That's a motorcycle show, right? It's about bikers.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but
I've never watched it, but.
Would you be offended? He might be a super handsome guy. He probably is.
Maybe. I just don't want to be a biker. I never want to be a biker. Yeah. Like a leather jacket. No offense to the bikers.
Any bikers who are listening.
That's just not me.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this conversation with my uncle who used to work at Google about the mirroring capacity of Google and the confirmation bias and how it kind of sets you into a certain channel of data that you're receiving, and that in some ways it prevents people from exploring the other side of the information they might be seeking. It allows us to be very biased to one side. So when you're doing research, you try and be objective and look up the devil's advocate, see what the other side is.
Yeah.
That is difficult on Google. You literally have to explicitly ask for the other side of information. Otherwise, you're just going to be given the side that reflects your previous held beliefs.
100%.
And so in some ways it prevents divergent thought and open-minded thinking. But, these tools are developing organically, and this just seems to be how it's presented itself in our day.
Well, the big problem with all of that right now is politics.
Right.
It's polarizing people so much based off of whatever political view they hold at the time, that political party could be doing the worst things imaginable, and people will still support them because they feel like they're part of that team, but they're also being fed all of this propaganda to keep them locked in.
Right.
So that's been interesting. Like my Twitter is all look, I don't really want to tell you which party I represent. I don't represent any party, but I have more, let's say, conservative views about politics.
Right.
It's just all conservative people.
Right,
with their conservative views. Now, okay, I probably agree with the majority of those things, but I don't throw away the left-wing views. I understand that there's social justice and certain things that, compassion and things like that maybe some of those more conservative views aren't as strong in, but it's interesting because if you don't know any better, if you're not wise to it, it will really lock you into a certain view.
Right.
And, even if down the road maybe that party is really failing at what they do, you'll still continue to vote for them.
Right.
Because you're just locked in, mentally, and they're really affecting your subconscious mind with all of the propaganda they're putting out there.
Totally, yeah, I agree. I feel as though I had leftist views for a long time in my life, and my feed was reflecting that.
Yeah.
And I'm now more of a moderate, I guess you could say. I sit between both parties. There are parts I like from each, and it's been interesting seeing the shift of my feed. It's starting to catch on to some newer ideas that I'm part of, but There's also the problem of intentional government censorship that's happening on a lot of these platforms. A lot of people were very happy when Elon Musk bought X because he said he's getting rid of the censorship.
Right.
But he employed his own algorithms. I was reading the other day an article from I guess you'd call it a whistleblower, but someone employed at X that said as soon as Elon took over, he started putting these pieces in the algorithm that were explicitly supporting his ideals. Certain people you could imagine who would be shown more, and certain ideas and concepts would be presented more. So maybe we have escaped a bit of the government censorship, but now the 100 billionaire who owns this company,
200 billion.
at least, he's hundreds of billionaires. I think his wealth has went up over 100 billion since president has went to office. But his ideals are now reflected on it. So
well, I mean, yes, but like my whole approach to all of this is like, who knows if what that guy's saying is even true? You should trust absolutely nothing on the internet.
Completely
Literally
agree.
nothing. Even the people that you agree with, assume that everything has a lie built into it, and then go reverse from there. If
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, first it's a lie, and then slowly try to find the truth in it.
Right.
Because most of these things are like, hearsay, or people like an opinion of another opinion of somebody that they've never even met.
Right.
And people lie on the internet about everything. You could say I work for this thing, and who knows?
Right.
It may not work anywhere. It could be some unemployed person. Like, I found out like there's a whole list of people who write left-wing propaganda that get paid by the Democratic Party to tweet all of this, and it's not even like, it's really low ball, uneducated.
These are people, not bots doing
propaganda
this.
nonsense. These are people, and they're getting paid.
Wow.
They're really getting paid to like be antagonists. Actually,
Interesting.
Yeah. So why would a political party want these antagonists causing people anger and outrage on the internet? Like that's a really good question that I have. Like, why do you want to make people mad? Why do you think that that's going to help your view or your cause to make people angry? That makes me believe that the cause is to make people angry. Like, that's the cause.
Interesting.
Yeah, to control people. Because when you're angry, you can be easily controlled.
Right, that's what I was just thinking, is they're putting a layer of emotion that's now tied to this experience. And you're going to operate in a much different way than if you were operating logically, when you're operating purely out of emotion. And I think that is intentionally done, not only on social media, but in protests. There's been assets planted there to make the protest seem a certain type of way. So yeah, it's interesting what's happening.
Yeah, and all of the speeches are very polarizing. Rarely do we hear like a speech of unity.
Right.
It's not like the Dalai Lama is getting up there and talking about how we have to live more in alignment with love and nature. It's all very black and white, like economy and this and that, and honestly, like I'm not opposed to a lot of the changes that are happening, and a lot of people are very opposed to them.
Right.
I think that the government should be as small as possible.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you in that regard. It's difficult to run a government. There are certain people who say, it's an entity which has no real oversight on it. It's given as much money as it needs, and it can take as much time as it wants to accomplish its goals. It's this cumbersome entity, whereas private corporations and entities operate with more efficiency. But also, a corporation is obligated to build profit for its shareholders. The executive board, that is their main directive. So they step over a lot of morality and conscious decision making when it's just for the profit of the shareholders. So it's a weird balance, but I think it's difficult to sift through all of this because, like you mentioned, there's so much misinformation on the internet, and people aren't sure who to trust. And you know, honestly, a lot of people don't go back and check the sources, or they don't have time to check the sources of all the media that we're consuming. I heard a statistic the other day that on average we're consuming 87 hours of media a week.
Wow.
If you're sleeping 8 hours a night, that's 56 hours. So you're more than you're sleeping, we're consuming media.
Something that comes to mind is like,
That's a
because I know we talk about states a lot, you know, like, is it a dissociative state when you're sitting and sort of, I don't know, being entertained by things on your phone, just kind of continuously going down, or is it like some sort of almost like sinking? Because it's like, you know, I do it and I don't feel bad after I might spend like a half hour just looking through, like, I don't feel like, you know, like sick or like like disgusted of myself. Like, I kind of just feel like okay, sounds good, put it down, do something else.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're legitimately doing research, that feels good.
Okay.
But if you're looking at like fight videos all the time, you might want to kill yourself afterwards.
True.
By the way, you have like a fuzz on your beard. I can't stop looking at.
Yeah, me too. You got it. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro.
I figured I'd help you out.
New style.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it depends what you're looking at. You know.
Totally.
That's like that's an interesting topic. You know, there are people who want to see the most grotesque thing imaginable on the internet too.
Right.
You know, that can't possibly be good for you.
Yeah, I feel like we're in an age right now where knowledge for the civilians, for constituents, is extremely important for our understanding in proposing what we desire, what we want the world to look like. If we don't have knowledge of how the system operates, we can't really make that decision with any real information. And so, you know, the fact that there's misinformation out there becomes difficult. But we are slowly, you know, starting to build, I think, a new world because of the amount of information out there. And I kind of had this, like, moment of around a month ago where I really wanted to start sharing information that I thought was important. And I had a few times on my stories I was sharing some things that I thought were important for people to know, and I realized in having conversations in person about some of these things that some people just don't want to know what is happening. They don't want to hear about the raw nature of government and you know, the nature of corporations and the dark side of things. In my opinion, it's important to understand that so we can know how to move forward. But there are a lot of people who don't want to be exposed to that at all. So, you know, how do you move forward with that?
Well, it's a good question, you know, I think, and it's hard because you can't confront people about it. You know, like I've seen people post some very ignorant things about politics, and the old Mark, you know, Mark, when, you know,
Biker Mark,
you know, maybe like, how long ago? Maybe 15 years ago, I would have went at that person and told them why they're wrong and why they should look at this or they should listen to this instead.
Yeah, I went through a phase like that as well.
Yeah, but now, like, I think we've all taken a step back from that in a way. Like a lot of people have, where people will post their opinion and it'll just be left alone. But you know, you have to wonder, like, wow, that person really believes that. How many more people like that are there with these kinds of beliefs that are just so misinformed? It's just like such a one-sided view that doesn't take into account like any consequences or anything. You know, like I really think people genuinely believe that anyone who works at the government is good and honest. I think a lot of people really believe that, and they think that there's only like one person, and it's the person that the media is telling you is, you know, Hitler or worse, Satan. You know, and they use, you know, the worst accusations against these people, and then they believe that, and that overshadows all of the actual corruption that's going on.
Totally agree.
You know? Yeah, it totally directs people towards that.
Right.
So it's like out of sight, out of mind, and then billions and billions and billions of dollars are being spent on stuff that we don't even know about, and all we hear about is like this debt ceiling and how much we owe.
Right.
And first of all, it doesn't matter how much money we owe. We print money. If we wanted to pay that
Federal
off,
Reserve idea is just so backwards and insane that we're just getting interest from this not even federal organization. We're $36 trillion in debt, and the amount of interest that requires each year that we get more and more in debt is taking a ridiculous amount of our income taxes. It's like a quarter or a third of our income taxes go to paying the interest off.
Well, if the debt was such a big deal, why wouldn't they print $38 trillion and pay it off? Why wouldn't they do that? If it's such a big deal,
on,
it has
inflation.
It has inflation, but how is that debt compared to the current debt that's causing the inflation that we have now? Like, how much more are we talking about?
Right.
Like, if we put 38 trillion on there, paid off the debt, how would that affect the dollar? What would the dollar be worth? Would the dollar completely collapse? No one's really having that conversation. All we hear about is the debt.
Too sure.
Yeah, see, because nobody's talking about it. We only hear about this $38 trillion.
Right.
And like, why do we owe $38 trillion?
Well, our president just flippantly kind of decided to spend $500 billion on AI. 3 companies in a partnership will be developing an AI that he also threw out there, that his goal is to develop an mRNA vaccine to fight cancer, which I find incredibly ironic based on the effects of the last mRNA vaccine that was
it's a little disturbing.
Put out. But that $500 billion was just, one of the many things he said we're spending money on. And there's this Department of Government Efficiency, which I imagine will probably effectively cut tens of billions of dollars, but will it cut $500 billion? But then there's the question, like, being a global leader in artificial intelligence is important for national security. It's important for being a technically dominant state, so I understand the motivation. So
it's a chess game.
We don't have an infinite amount of money to spend, but there are more things that we really need to spend money on than we can.
See, I think we do have an infinite amount of money to spend. I think it's an illusion that we don't. That's and it's a very unpopular opinion, but there's nothing backing our currency. It's just numbers. Numbers never end.
Right.
There's nothing holding us back from paying for these things.
Well, currency is based really, on the end of things, on scarcity of goods and services. And scarcity still does exist within our species. I think if we had a free energy producing technology, scarcity would completely fall away. Money wouldn't really matter. But I think at this point there is scarcity, even amongst, the United States as compared to other countries is incredible. But even within the United States, the top 17 billionaires own as much as the lower half of the United States wealth-wise. And so there is some scarcity that we're all striving to attain a piece of,
Well, that's like, most the money that is in circulation is very concentrated on those people. That's true. But as far as like resources go, we have more natural resources than we'll ever use. We have, like, the whole concept that there's not enough oil is insane.
We do have
there's enough oil for us to live until the Earth moves so far away from the moon that we will all die anyway.
We're discovering more and more oil and natural gas, and with fracking and all that.
And who's talking about that? That the moon is moving further and further away from the Earth, and eventually it will affect fertility, because women, their menstrual cycle is based off of the moon.
Wow.
And if the moon becomes further and further away from the Earth, women won't be able to have babies anymore, and our species will die.
Wow.
But
fertility is already being immensely impacted. There's the stat that keeps presenting itself on my newsfeed. Men have 50% of the sperm count than they used to have. I think it was in the 90s or the 80s.
Yeah, man.
That's an insane drop off.
They've been eating Taco Bell since the 80s.
Yeah,
so,
there's so many factors that play into this. There's the radiation from electronic devices. There's obviously the crazy amount of environmental toxins, microplastics.
Microplastics freak me out a little bit.
In my opinion, a lot of the jabs have been affecting people.
Yeah, but they used to put lead in people's dentures. You know.
Oh yeah.
So those people were having babies.
Yeah.
You know. Like
the lead. They used to put lead. There was a few men who decided that it would be effective to use lead in gasoline to prevent knocking in engines, and those few men caused the death. If you look at the effects of lead that entered the atmosphere, of tens of millions of people had cardiac failure directly due to lead exposure.
Yeah.
So it's,
So if that was going on and people were still having babies, what is really going on now? Is
right. There might be an intentional.
It is the moon.
It could be the moon.
It could be the moon. We gotta reel the moon back in.
Yeah, let's get a fucking big fishing rod and get that thing back here.
Yeah. Maybe we need a new device.
Yeah.
To suck the moon closer to the Earth.
There's a lot of interesting technology that's coming to fruition nowadays, and it's interesting how it affects our experience on Earth. There's all this talk about AI. Our capacity to modulate biology is getting insane. With the development of CRISPR, this technology where you can cut out pieces of DNA and insert new pieces of DNA. It holds the promise to cure basically all genetic diseases in this genetic technology, but it also holds the promise of Putin has already stated that he's going to start modulating his army to be more pain resistant, have less emotion, and make them more superhuman for fighting in battle.
Yeah.
So this is something that's happening now. Like, we're putting money towards changing what humans look like, sort of like in that movie Gattaca, but it's real now.
That's nothing new either, though. Like Hitler gave his army meth. And it did the same thing. These people were like unstoppable. And had no moral compass at all.
But now we have the capacity to change a human's expression of genetics. We've always been guided by natural selection, and now evolution is in our hands. We have the tools to change how our species evolves, because within CRISPR technology you can put the CRISPR cutting device itself so that all of one's progeny also has the same genetic change that you made in that person. So literally, if we change one bloodline, all of their bloodlines will follow suit and be an altered human. We're using CRISPR in areas that have malaria right now. We're giving the male mosquitoes altered genetic codes with CRISPR so that they cannot procreate, and all of their children will be unable to procreate, so it kills off the mosquitoes. We're already using this in other species. We're going to use it in our species. So there is, and we probably will make the choice, if you had a choice to make your child healthy and intelligent while it was still a fetus, you would probably choose to do so.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of a cheat, because
it is.
You used to have to, instead of now, I've taken care of myself, I've been healthy, I'm gonna procreate, I'm gonna have a child, and my child theoretically should be healthy too. Like, the whole concept of having good genes, good genetics, it will be irrelevant. It won't matter at all. I mean, maybe that's good. I mean, a lot of people are afraid of these things. They claim that you're playing God, right?
Right.
Okay. What if we're supposed to play God?
Right. That's
why would these things happen if they weren't supposed to happen?
Right.
That's where I get caught up when people are like, "Oh, that's against God." Well, first of all, who's God? Like, whose God are you talking about? And where did God tell you this? Where are you getting this information from? It's like
I had a conversation with a friend about this the other day about, at what point is technology technology? You see a monkey putting a stick into a tree to get ants out, that's technology. You see humans using a spear to hunt bison, that's technology. You see us developing iron or bronze swords, that's technology. So at what point is it not natural? Because a lot of people would say hunting the bison with the spear is natural and the monkey getting the stick with the ants is natural. So isn't everything then natural? This is of how nature expresses itself through our intentional design of things.
Yeah.
So it's hard to really say what's natural and what's not.
Yeah, and some people have this bias that, I do natural medicine.
Right.
But I'm not biased where I'm like, natural medicine is always better than, pharmaceutical based medicine because it's not natural.
Totally.
What if instead of looking at it like it isn't natural, we could look at it like it's supernatural? Because it's not like those elements are not found in nature somewhere.
Right.
They're just, synthesized and made stronger.
80% of pharmaceuticals are derived directly from alkaloids found in plants in the Amazon jungle.
Right.
Well,
Yes, pharmacognosy was the precursor to pharmacology, and everything used to be plant-based, but we can't possibly grow the amount of plants needed to make effective medicine for massive populations.
You don't think so?
I don't know.
I think we do. I mean, we have the capacity to feed the earth. Like, our big agriculture is amazing at how much food it can produce under one farm. The technology they have, unfortunately, it comes with things like Roundup and genetically modified foods. But if you were to just use some of the technologies that big ag has and employ it on medicines, I think that would be valuable, because a lot of these plants come with other alkaloids that, a lot of the medicines that we take, the pharmaceuticals, have side effects. If you look at the full plant profile of alkaloids and molecules that it delivers to you, it usually treats and ameliorates those side effects. The full plant option is almost always a healthier solution than, but oftentimes the problem is you can't get a high enough dose of the effective piece from the plant medicine, so we isolate it and synthesize only that one.
Yeah, like for instance, I do traditional Chinese medicine, and sometimes herbs aren't available because they're out of season.
Wow.
They're not mass produced.
Right.
These are very...
We're so spoiled and expecting everything should be available all the time.
So that could happen if there's like some big outbreak. That could happen if we're only depending on plant-based medicine. That's the negative side of natural medicine.
Right.
But, obviously if these pharmaceutical companies spent their resources on plant-based medicine, we would have it.
Right.
They're just spending their resources on petroleum-based medicine.
Right. Well, you can't patent a plant, and that is largely the reason why they will extract a molecule from a plant, sometimes modulate it with moving one oxygen over. Maybe it'll make it a bit more effective, but now it's patentable, and now they can get rights and make billions of dollars.
It's so weird though, like why are they so hung up on the patent when, like, okay, let's say there's an open patent, why can't companies just compete as far as like who has the better product? Why does it have to be patented?
Because the one who develops the product has to go through clinical trials, and that costs over $10 million even for a small drug. So in order to bring a drug to market for a pharmaceutical company, it costs them tons of money. So the compensatory mechanism which government has in place is that we'll give you the rights solely to sell this drug so that you can recuperate the cost of paying for your clinical trials. And it's worked well for some time. It depends on the drug. A lot of times patents will last 10 years, sometimes like 3 years, and then it can be generically produced, and then there's competition between
and I think that's great if there's a very specific illness that we are collectively, like it's a problem for society.
Right.
Then that works. But now they're just patenting as many different drugs for all these kinds of made up diseases that it's out of control now. So Now it's all for profit. It's like, how do we make money? Oh, you sneeze 3 times a week. You know, you need this. You know, like they're making these problems into problems that
right. One of the most easy ways to illustrate that is Bayer. I think it used to be IG Farben, the largest company in Germany. Bayer is one of the largest companies in the world now. But they, I think in 2018, bought Monsanto, which produces Roundup and genetically modified foods, which is the cause of many illnesses, largely inflammatory issues, a lot of colonic issues. And Bayer sells the pharmaceuticals which treat the conditions that their genetically modified, sprayed with Roundup foods produce.
Yeah.
So they have, it's all encapsulated. Even in just one company expresses the problematic nature of this.
Yeah, it really comes full circle with that. Right? I mean, you could look at it like, okay, you have the COVID vaccine, then you have COVID, and this vaccine is just mysteriously available. You know, you have to really question that.
How did that come about so quick?
How did they have that ready to go?
You know, I took a class in my undergrad called Technology and Human Values, where we learned a lot about cutting edge technologies and how they were integrated into society. And one of the main takeaways from it was that once a technology is discovered, created, it will be implemented into society. It's not a question of like, can we stop it? No, it will become a part of society, and it will be integrated into culture. Really, our responsibility as a species is to, put regulations or modify the technology so that it has its own safeguards within it, which is what we're seeing in AI right now. We're going through that experience. But, a lot of people are like, well, there shouldn't be technologies, and it's wishful thinking. As soon as something is developed, you can't just say, put it in the back in the box. It's going to be used.
Yeah, the genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
The genie's out of the bottle. I like that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, people are against anything they're unfamiliar with.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it is. It could be like the most benign thing in the world, and somebody's going to be against it. Someone's going to be offended by it.
Yeah.
People have become so overly sensitive to everything that, and it also doesn't even matter. Like, people are going to do this whether you like it or not.
I'm offended by your AI sex bot.
Right?
You don't think she's sexy?
I don't think you should have it.
Somebody probably would be,
Yeah.
Oh, man.
By the way, ChatGPT does not do good astrology readings at all.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, not accurate. The planets and everything they're not accurate. Like, if you asked it to do your birth chart, it wouldn't do it properly. So whoever is working on that, get to work. And also songs. If you ask, like today, I asked for the guitar chords for a song, and I looked at it, and I'm like, these are not correct.
It's giving out chords?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, it's all based on how it's trained, It was probably trained with incorrect information. The site it got it off of had it wrong.
Yeah, so there's errors with the chords and lyrics. It's not always accurate.
Yeah, makes sense.
Would you consider a highly developed, super intelligent AI ever to be conscious?
Yeah, I mean, like, if it could become conscious if the source of consciousness decides to animate it.
I agree. In my opinion, we live in this vibrating solid of the universe, of which is consciousness, and we are nodes of recursive logic which tap into this consciousness and express a sliver of the infinite experience. And we call that consciousness individually, but really there's this global super intelligent consciousness. But I heard it was, I believe, an interview with the grandfather of AI discussing consciousness and AI, and he said, well, if you had a brain and you were to change one of the neurons with a processor, you would still say it's a conscious human brain. What if you change 500 trillion of those brain cells with data processing, NVIDIA chips? At what point of having neurons replaced with silicon chips, does it go from conscious to not conscious? You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's this whole concept that consciousness is deriving, like the brain is the source of the consciousness, but that's
Right.
not the source of the consciousness.
Right, that's what I was trying to get at. It's this etheric
So
experience.
AI is never going to be the source of any consciousness.
No.
But if consciousness decides to use AI as an avatar.
I like that.
Yeah.
Whereas the choice is really in the ether, which is consciousness, to decide which it animates.
Right.
Whereas I was kind of seeing it from there's a certain structure or capacity within the design of molecules that allows it to be conscious. But I kind of like what you're coming at, that the universe can decide which it animates.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the way I see it is the universe is existing in this conscious egoic experience such that it can experience separation.
So, you know, I'm going to shift to UFOs for a minute because...
Always happy about that.
Because according to certain sources, these UFOs are biological machines.
Yes.
That they are somehow living and, you know, conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So consciousness has decided to animate those UFOs. Right? That's why they can do miraculous things, I suppose. You know, things that you couldn't imagine, that are beyond any technology that we have in our, you know, in our ability, within our ability of designing something.
Right.
So, have you ever heard this before? That these are biological machines?
Yes.
Yeah. Where did you? Do you remember where you've heard that? Because I don't remember.
Oh man.
I've done so much UFO research that I just
thousands of hours of UFO research. So I couldn't tell you where I first heard that. But you know, it aligns with the idea that Stephen Greer has been putting out for like 30 years, and now finally whistleblowers from the government are coming out and saying that we can psionically, like psychically, summon UFOs.
Yeah, that's what they
in the right mind state because they are conscious entities.
We talked about that on episode 3, but it was also recently on the Rogan podcast.
Right.
Those whistleblowers were on there talking about it, and I've had direct experience summoning. Well, you know, not ships, but orbs.
Mm-hmm.
They have arrived when I summoned them.
Yeah, you mentioned.
You know?
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so this means that this technology is conscious and it has some biological aspect to it. So if we were to create a biological machine, it wouldn't be conscious unless consciousness decided to animate it. Like, we have no source of consciousness available to us. Like, we can't pull consciousness out of something.
Stick it into something else.
Right. So that's fascinating to me. Like, why did the creative source decide to animate that? But it won't animate, like, this chair, you know?
Right.
Like, what decides what's going to be animate and inanimate?
That's a really great question.
Right? Because there's an inanimate level, there's an animal level, there's a human level, and then there's the angelic level.
Right.
And then there's beyond that, there's God. Right? So we've seen a little jump from animal consciousness to human consciousness where certain animals could perform human-like tasks, but we've never seen an inanimate object perform any kind of conscious thing, conscious ability, right? But apparently, these ships have that. Right? So I find that to be just interesting.
Right, why is
if it's true.
Other species able to manifest or draw upon some technology which can become conscious? Because I imagine it would be, you know, some sort of non-human intelligence that's creating or in some way involved with these conscious crafts. So some way they're involved with the expression of that consciousness through source. how do they figure that out? You know, they're maybe millions of years ahead of us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they might have access to consciousness itself in a way where they could put consciousness into something.
Right.
Or maybe they're using their consciousness. Maybe they are a collective consciousness.
I've heard that interpretation from a lot of whistleblowers and people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. Like Ra visited the planet in a ship, and they made the ship with their consciousness.
It had to intentionally become one entity when it was a socio, like, multiplicity mind entity. In order to connect with us, it had to come down to one egoic, in a way, source, so that we could interact with it.
Yeah, so there's a social memory complex that uses its consciousness to create a ship, and that consciousness is then the ship. It becomes the ship.
Wow.
Temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
And it does its ship thing, and then it goes back to being a collective consciousness. It morphs into whatever it wants, and that's how I think that these UFOs come into our awareness.
Yeah.
But I also think that, okay, so I lost my train of thought on that. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of directions to go.
Yeah, UFOs are such a fascinating topic, and they're in alignment with spirituality. Like, spirituality, healing, and UFOs all go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's not a surprise that people who are into spirituality also happen to be into UFOs, And
well, that's how I got into spirituality, was actually being terrified of UFOs.
You mentioned that, yeah.
And that's what led me to spirituality.
It's ironic, huh?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about what I wanted to say about this social memory complex, creating a ship, coming here. But obviously it was Ra who did this, who was a sixth...
From the law of one.
Yeah, who's a sixth density collective consciousness. People are going to think, like, what is this guy talking about? But they created the ship, they came here, they spoke the law of one, they tried to tell people that we're all one being, we're all one source of infinite consciousness. And that didn't work out very well, and then they left and they returned, right? But the ship was just this temporary vessel for their collective consciousness, right?
Right.
So if we know that that's real, we know that that's available, then I'm sure it's being used in other ways. I'm sure it's being used.
There's no doubt that right now we are seeing a massive influx, probably exponentially higher amount of sightings than we ever have. A lot of them are these orb-like UFOs, UAPs. Some of them are shape-shifting, which lends a hand to it maybe being a biological entity. But, I've heard interpretations for people discussing this whole phenomena that there is maybe, whether it's one or multiple species, their intention right now is to make their presence clear. And as we're going through this, we're also experiencing, since 2017, this slow disclosure process from the government. And it's strange how, like, numb or just, like, unavailable to maybe digest this information is for most people. Because it's coming out, and you think it would be like huge news that the United States has confirmed recovered crafts and has been working on reverse engineering alien crafts for 80 years now, and that we are psychically connecting with UFOs. These things have been confirmed. Whistleblowers had to get government authority to release this information. So at least that's what the government wants us to know. Maybe it's not true for that reason, but you'd think this would be like huge news. But
this could be the reason for our such quick progression and advancement with technology and AI, no?
Yeah, I've heard that interpretation
I feel like that's what it says to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, people exchange technological advancement for doing the biddings of more negatively oriented off-world entities.
Right.
So they'll be like,
abductions.
yeah, so I don't really want to get too deep into that.
Yeah.
But
Kind of dark, but.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of the technology actually came from.
Mm-hmm.
But, hopefully that's not still happening. I mean, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
A lot of what people like Alan Greer, or is it Stephen Greer? Alan Greer? Stephen Greer and Bob Lazar are vehemently trying to express is that our government has technologies which could bring us into a new era of humanity, largely implying that we have a free energy generating type of energy source. I don't know if you guys have heard about the disappearance of Malaysian Flight 370 and the videos that came along with that.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
There's some videos that were released by a whistleblower about a month after the flight disappeared that shows 3 orbs following and circling around the plane.
Yeah.
And then there's a flash of light and the plane just disappears.
Yeah, maybe it went through a portal.
And that's what, there's some people who have been like obsessed with looking into this. One of them is Ashton Forbes. But, throughout the beautiful information sharing world of Reddit and 4chan, they investigated whether these videos are real and what exactly that light flash could be. They talked to physicists and were able to arrive that it was a cold fusion. There were plasma orbs that were surrounding the plane, and there was a cold fusion explosion that allowed for an envelope basically to be ballooned in the universe. And so that matter can flow through it and be transported to another location. And so, there's amazing evidence that supports that this is actually what happened. And then you have to ask, was that a non-human intelligence, or was that our government that was doing it? And if it was some government that's doing it, they're withholding incredibly valuable energy technology. But also that technology could be used for weapons that would make atomic nuclear weapons seem like child's play. Yeah. So there's always the national security layer, and that's why they oftentimes don't release information about our reverse engineered craft. So
that's actually how I got to the office this morning through that kind of portal. They also didn't they discover a portal above the Skinwalkers Ranch? Isn't that what they're saying, that there's a portal there?
Yeah, that's how it's been described, that some of the events have happened.
Yeah, because they are doing actual scientific. Have you watched the show?
I don't know if there's a show. I know that Robert Bigelow bought it out, and I've done tons of research on it, but I never knew there was a show.
Someone bought it from Bigelow, and there's a show.
They're still doing research on it now.
Yeah, they're doing it on the show.
Wow.
Yeah, and they have live footage of UFOs and live footage of unexplainable phenomenon and orbs, and also some kind of demonic stuff, like some guy had like a brain aneurysm on the show or something like that.
Yeah.
From digging in the ground, who knows what's in the ground there, there may be a craft underground because there's something deep in the soil.
Right.
It could be something else. It could be some kind of like generator or something, or some technology from, Lazar said that a lot of the crafts came from archaeological digs, right? So that means they're millions of years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And it says that in the raw material too, that these crafts came from archaeological digs.
I wonder how on earth we were able to locate that. Maybe that was a piece of information that non-human intelligence gave us. How the hell are we supposed to find crafts that are buried underneath?
Channeling.
That's
people
true
channel.
too.
People get information. I believe that acupuncture
remote viewing and
channeled.
Project Stargate may have elucidated some of that information.
I think the acupuncture meridians were channeled.
I agree.
Because there's no
How
way
the hell
they
could
knew
someone
that
have visualized that?
Yeah.
It blows my mind, and that's the only conclusion I've ever been able to arrive at, is that someone had some like blessed moment experience where they just were downloaded the information about the human energy complex.
Yeah, I think that everything that we really come to know is channeled. I don't really believe that people are like smarter or someone has more brain capacity. I think they just have a better ability to channel.
I mean, some of the best stories come from dreams. Yeah. And like, is that a channel? I would say so.
Yeah, it's it's some form of a channel. It's actually being in the astral realm. So it comes from this astral voyage that somebody went on,
Right.
and they gathered information and they brought it back into the physical reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of books are written by dreams, but like religions derive from channeled material. Like, isn't what is the Mormon religion? No, not Mormon. The what the heck is it called? The people who knock on your door, the Jehovah Witnesses. They're like similar to what we have, like what we know as a Bible.
Right.
Their book is channeled. It's a channel. It's a channeling. It's a channeling book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I know recently Bashar, he's a famous channeler.
Yeah, Bashar, he's good.
Yeah,
and
Bashar,
I'm not sure
yeah.
about how much I buy into it,
I
but
think a lot of
he
that,
was talking about extraterrestrials recently, and I thought that was interesting because he may be channeling extraterrestrials, and that's what he said he was channeling, and they were expressing their purpose for being here right now in this moment.
Yeah, I think Bashar. A lot of Bashar is Daryl Anka. I think like he might have been. He probably has the ability to channel, but I think that he had to for that to be sustainable.
Right.
He would have serious kidney damage.
Well, what
serious
about
serious
the raw
kidney damage.
material?
Carla
The
had
woman-
serious kidney
Did
damage
she?
from it. Yeah.
Wow.
And she was
Damn.
also under constant psychic attack.
Is that because of the fear implicating in the
No,
kidney
it just
meridian?
takes your essence. It steals your essence from you to connect on such a high level of energy. Like
kidney
how,
deficiency.
yeah, you'll get kidney
That's
deficiency.
crazy.
It'll destroy your kidneys. You know, think about kidneys is the water element, and you're using the waters of the mind.
Right.
So
Water
it's
is what
gonna-
connects us.
Yeah, so it's going to deplete that.
Interesting.
You know, and I think through the water is where we have these telepathic abilities through
Yeah.
water, actually, not through brain power,
Mm-hmm.
but through water.
Yeah,
So that would
I would
support
agree.
that water is like a conscious entity then.
No,
Yes.
through
Like
the
a lot of
water in
people say.
us.
Right.
We have water. It's
Right.
not actual H2O, but there's fluid in our bodies.
Yeah.
And there's fluid in the brain. There's cerebral spinal fluid in the brain.
Mhm.
I think that that's where we're getting our information from. That
Mhm.
cerebral spinal fluid is very important for consciousness.
Up to I think 70 or 80 water molecules distance from a cell or a biological entity in your body. Water is in a crystalline liquid form, and water, when it's in its crystalline form, like the concept of crystals, has the capacity to, I think, channel and
Yeah.
gather etheric information.
100%.
And so our body, very few things in the world can put liquid into this liquid crystal form, but our bodies naturally do it all around our body. It's like that.
Yeah, that's why I think that everything we're doing is channeling. I mean, you don't have to think before you talk. You just talk. Where is that coming from? Like, you know, and also language is artificial intelligence.
Right. We're
So-
thinking about that.
Yeah, so we're channeling this source of language. Yeah, we learn it, but it's also like a stream of consciousness that's just coming out of our mouth, right? Like, do you really think about what you're saying before you talk? Who does that?
Like-
On
I
this
think I do,
on
but-
this podcast, I do because I got to make sure I
Okay.
sound at least half as intelligent as you guys are ripping right now.
No, I completely
mean-
feel you.
You know, I don't really feel that intelligent tonight, which is fine because I don't want to like overcompensate with that. You know, I'm like, you know, when I do the satsang and stuff like that, I have nothing prepared.
Wow.
It's just all channeled.
I feel
It
that.
ends up so
I feel
beautifully. But I completely agree with your point of view where intelligence is sort of a misled concept. You know,
Right.
Einstein said if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll live its whole life thinking it's stupid. You know, we're all designed and evolved to operate in ways that are most efficient for our individuality. And some people have, you know, this internal milieu of thoughts and intelligence that could be incredibly effective in one way, and you would never know it because you're only existing in this other arena. You know, like IQ tests, I imagine, only test a sliver of the
Yeah.
brain's capacity to operate. You know,
Like people call Kanye West a genius, right?
Yeah.
Would you trust Kanye West to do heart surgery on you?
no,
No.
Exactly what I was getting at with the
Yeah.
fish thing.
Right. So he is channeling some very specific thing based off of his vibratory, like we're all this vibratory thought complex, right? We're a mind, body, spirit complex that is channeling from a vibratory thought complex based off of our own individual vibration, which is unique to each individual person, right? So we're all able to get this unique stream of consciousness that is unique to the individual, and we don't really know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
We have no fucking clue. And to sit here and be like, I'm smarter than you, that's not true at all. I've just learned how to channel better. You could have like an endless stream of bullshit coming out of you too, you know, like, because a lot of the stuff we say, you know, we don't even know if it's true, you know, but it feels true in the moment, and we're like, yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah.
You know, we really don't know, but where does the information come from? Where does a new thought come from? Like that was like a big part of like the Buddha's teachings, Guantanamo Buddha, like, you know, realizing that a thought it would just arise. He didn't think up the thought. There was no exertion to gather a thought. A thought just came in.
Right.
You know, so that was his whole, and then he started eating again because he's like, oh, you know, I'm never going to be able to be free of thinking if thoughts just arise.
Wow.
Something like that. You know, I'm probably explaining it wrong. I'm a little off today.
No, I got you.
But yeah, so if that is true, if thoughts just arise, like in Kabbalah, we say that you're not the author of your thoughts.
Right.
You're not writing the script. So who is? The creator. All thoughts come from the creator.
Yet we all experience different thoughts that naturally or randomly come to us. Maybe it's in the same way that Google has defined your essence in a certain way that delivers a certain edge of information. That consciousness and the way your brain has developed allows for the super consciousness to deliver thoughts through a certain lens that you've evolved into over time.
Well, think about it this way. Do all guitars sound the same?
Definitely not.
No. What if you had two guitars that were the same brand? Would they sound exactly the same brand, same model, same strings, same everything? Would they sound exactly the same? Probably not.
No,
right?
there'd be something a little bit different.
They would be slightly different. So it's the same thing with us.
Right.
It's
Identical
like
twins are different humans. They develop into different personalities.
So, you know, we could look at ourselves as an instrument for consciousness.
I completely agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, so consciousness is using us as an instrument.
That's how I was kind of feeling earlier when we were discussing consciousness as the super intelligence that has to create a separation, I guess, in essence, in order to have this egoic experience. And I think it was Duncan Trussell talking about consciousness. Imagine the universe as this all fully conscious being. It knows everything that's going on with itself, and it's got to be so damn lonely. You know, it's just you, and you experience everything all at once, and maybe it's beautiful, but after a while it's just like, man, it's just me here. Let's put some people let's put some separation into this experience so I can have relational experience.
I actually wrote a really beautiful poem about that, which I'll share with you later because it's on the camera.
Oh, cool.
But I have a good story about this. So I have a friend who passed away at a very young age in a motorcycle accident, and he had an alcohol issue, but supposedly he hadn't been drinking for weeks, but he rode his motorcycle home from a bar, and the people at the bar said that he was drinking water, which is what I observed him doing at bars too. I observed him hanging out and drinking water, but he rode the motorcycle home, got into an accident, and he died. And I went to his funeral, and I sat in the front row, even in front of his own family, me and my two friends, because we were all best friends, and we were really mad actually, because we didn't really trust his behavior, you know, because he had this history of alcoholism. So years later, maybe 10 years later, I'm with my wife, and we're driving out east to go to Mattatuck to have breakfast at Love Lane Kitchen. Beautiful place, by the way. If you're listening, we love your food.
Love Lane, huh?
Love Lane Kitchen.
Sounds pretty.
Right? Isn't that very romantic?
Yeah.
So we're going to Love Lane Kitchen. We go, we eat, we have a good time. We're on our way back, and I start talking about how I still have this anger because I'm angry at my friend because I think he was drinking and he killed himself. So I'm saying this out loud. I get home, we pull up to the house, I open the mailbox, and in the mail there is a keychain, and the keychain is the red motorcycle that he was riding when he died. And attached to the keychain was a letter, and it was an advertisement for a law firm that represents people who were in motorcycle accidents.
Wow.
Oh my God.
So that was like something confirming to me that this was just an accident. And what are the odds that it was a red motorcycle, the same motorcycle that he owned, the same shape, the same fucking motorcycle that he owned, after I'm literally talking about this 10 years later, 10 years after his death. This is also somebody who would kind of play like a prank like that, but let's say it's not him. Let's say it's just that, consciousness that is observing everything, that is connected to everything. It could easily just put that there for me, to kind of make itself more known, like, hey, I am watching everything that you do. That's why, a few times I've said everything you should do as if you're in the presence of God.
I love that.
Yeah. Like, no matter what you're doing, if you feel uncomfortable doing it in the presence of God, you probably shouldn't do it. But that was wild, and then I don't know what happened to the keychain. It's just gone.
So why did that indicate to you that it was definitely an accident? Just
because it was a law firm that represented motorcycle accidents.
Right, okay. That makes
like the word accident was in the letter.
Right. You needed you wanted an answer, and you got it.
That was the answer. That it was
got
an accident. It just confirmed it internally for me that this wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
And that made me feel a lot better. So, when people are looking for like healing and stuff like that, look to God. Like, a lot of people don't do that anymore. Healing used to be like a very faith-based practice.
Yeah.
Some people may not come to my practice because they think it's too faith-based and maybe not scientific enough. But, I agree with a lot of scientific stuff. I don't disagree with it. I was just talking about the positives of pharmaceutical drugs. They're not all negative. Is it a very corrupt system? Absolutely. This podcast is brought to you by Pfizer, by the way.
Oh, God.
Right.
But no, seriously, there's good in everything, just like there's bad in everything. There's an element of good and evil in all things. It's not just one or the other.
Right.
It's how are you using it? How are you polarizing in that moment? Are you, polarizing more towards service to others, or just this egoic, self-serving nature?
I've toyed around with this idea for a while in my head, and for some time when I was at school at UNM pursuing a degree in Chinese medicine, I was exposed to Taoism, and I'd already had some knowledge about it, but there's this means of living in Wu Wei, living as though the Tao has and will present the ultimately correct future for you. You don't need to meddle with it.
Yeah.
And I also had, before I went to Portland, I was in my yoga teacher training exposed to Hindu ideology, and I was into that before, but got a deeper experience into it. And in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the main texts in Hinduism, it discusses Krishna and Arjuna are presented with an opposing force in which Arjuna's brothers are on the other side of the battlefield, and Krishna is saying to him, you must fight against these people. Although they're your brothers, you have to defend what is right, and you have to fight for righteousness. So there's sort of a dichotomy in those two ideologies, and I'm not sure really where I lie on that spectrum. I think sometimes, especially the moment I think we're at right now, politically and socially and culturally, I feel as though it's important for us to fight for what is right. And the question is, what is right? It's difficult to find out, but
truth.
Right, but truth is so relative.
How much do you love truth? That's what people should be fighting for.
I agree.
And that whole story, it's really about resistance and exertion. So we all create our own internal resistance to the Tao, to reality, right? Where we want to control reality. Instead of being in the Tao, in the Wu way, is the art of non-doing. It's allowing it's allowing reality to shape you and your life and your experience instead of trying to control it, right?
Right.
So the resistance is our need for control. So when we have that need for control, it gets out of control. No pun intended. But then I want to control you. I want to control you. I want to control this podcast. I want to be the one in control, right? We do that all the time. I want to control how much I sleep. I want to control how much I eat. I want to control how much people love me. I want to control how much money I have and blah, 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 right? And then there's exertion. Exertion is the energy that we're expending to try and achieve that control.
Right.
So you could look at it like once Arjun stops exerting himself, then there's peace. Once the resistance is dropped, there's no more war. It's an internal war with all of the people in his own mind, right? All of the people on the battlefield are all the different versions of himself.
Right.
And he's at war with all of those versions. These are all different separate egos.
Right.
Right? So resistance is the control that we don't have, right? We don't have control. So we know this, and that creates resistance.
Right.
And then there's exertion, which is this attempt to control the uncontrollable. Like, it's like trying to control the sun, We're not able to control the sun. Even if you're Bill Gates, you can't control the sun. Do you remember he tried to, remember he had
the mesosphere around it, maybe?
He wanted to put chemicals in the atmosphere to block out the sun to prevent global warming.
Oh, I think that's happening through chemtrails and, that's been pretty much admitted by the government now. You check out the EPA's site, they have information on cloud seeding. There's so many people in the United States that collect rainwater and have it tested independently. Private labs show that there's heavy metals, and heavy metals don't evaporate from the ground, so they must have been sprayed in order to come down. So we are, I think, actively doing what Bill Gates proposed.
Since the beginning of time, we've been trying to control nature, though. This isn't anything new. It's just now that people have more technology now to do that. But maybe they don't have more technology. Maybe the magic that used to be done is an even higher technology because we don't need some kind of electronic device.
Right.
If I could control the weather through Taoist weather magic, I don't need to spend $1 billion to control the weather.
Yeah.
Right?
In some ways, we have, lost our innate capacity to operate in certain ways. I think humans used to have a far more telepathic capacity than we have now. We are more connected via information than we have ever been in the existence of humanity. However, we are also the most isolated that we've ever been since we've started collecting that data. People feel more lonely than ever.
So this is the result of getting that technology from negative sources.
Ooh.
This is the exchange, right? I give you this, and now I have domination and control over you forever. And you're going to be isolated and miserable and anxious and depressed, and I'm going to feed off of that. I'm going to feed off of all of that negativity, and and the people who I'm controlling, they're going to make money off of you. Right. They're going to sell you all kinds of shit that you don't need. That's the current system.
Yeah. I I think you kind of touched on this in one of the other podcasts about how, using magic for your own egoic purposes, be it witchcraft, voodoo, whatever it is, comes with these karmic implications.
Right. When you borrow energy from the source.
When you borrow money from the mob.
Yeah, it's like,
well,
I mean,
same thing.
It has to be returned.
Yeah.
It has to be returned. So who's returning it? And how does it get returned? Usually in a way that you didn't expect.
Right.
It's like you sign up for something, you don't really know what you fully signed up for, right? Then things happen, and it's unexpected, but that's kind of how it works. A lot of people are very naive with magic. Like I see a lot of people on social media, like I'm a shaman, I'm a magician,
Yeah.
I'm a tarot reader, I'm this and that. Yeah, and that's very interesting to me because I think if they knew the implications of what they were attempting to do, maybe they wouldn't do it. Like you're going to interfere with somebody's destiny at what cost? What is the price that you're willing to pay for that? To what? To satisfy your own ego and to be able to tell people that you did some magic?
Right.
Because that's really like, what is the benefit? Are you getting a little bit of money? Like, this is where people they're making deals with the devil in a way,
right.
In so many words,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's not good. Don't do that. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop being.
Don't do the cheat codes.
Don't be a. You can't be just a shaman without. The word shaman is being thrown around like crazy.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. When I went to Peru and experienced some medicine, the shaman there came from generational lines dating thousands of years back who experienced this medicine. He was intentionally chosen, started to experience the medicine at 8, I think hosted his first ceremony at 13.
Yeah.
And this was integrated into his way of life pretty much since birth. He was walked through this shamanistic path.
Right.
And they, in Peru, at least my experience with that type of shaman, are very separated from technology. They're living off the earth. It's just interesting. It becomes semantics at some point.
To even be around that guy in a sober state, like how did you feel something from him just being around him?
He was incredibly grounded and had this state of like contentiousness. He was always content, and it felt nice to be around him. He only spoke Spanish. Unfortunately, I couldn't communicate with him directly.
But he was like a Baba. You would just be in his presence and you would feel joy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. When somebody, they've shaped their self in such a way where they've become such a clear channel. They've raised their vibration so much that the love of the creator is just flowing through them so much that you could actually feel it. You could feel it just being in that person's presence. That's my dream. Like, I would love to be like that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I'm full of a lot of distortions, just like everybody here. This is a very difficult place to be.
It feels pretty good to be around you, man.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
I'd agree.
you.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. But you know what I mean. Some people might disagree.
You know what I find interesting is one of those people, most prominent in history, is Osho. And everybody who followed him spoke about this, like, palpable sense of purity that came from him when you were anywhere near him, when he was sharing messages. And then how corrupt him and his executive board, I guess you could call it, became. It fascinates me because he had that energy.
Drugs and sex will do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, I cut you off there. Go.
No, that's pretty much. I was asking what did it, and that's
what did it.
That's what did it.
Sex. Drugs and sex. But who gave him the drugs? I'm sure there was some psyop that they were like, they figured it out. We'll just bring some drugs into their compound. It'll start getting circulated around. They'll corrupt themselves, and this whole thing will fall apart.
Yeah.
this is how they control everyone. You know, that's the whole thing with like the Epstein thing. You know, they're just using it for blackmail, controlling people. Yeah, you know.
Obviously, it exists in the music industry now. We're finding out.
Oh yeah, in the music industry, anyone who wants power, they use these highly unethical, manipulative tactics to keep power. That's why, you know, anyone with this very self-serving agenda is going to be sort of controlled by black magicians. There are black magicians on the astral plane that are working through these people and feeding off of their energy.
Yeah.
And that's how they get all of these devious ideas, because they're literally being psychically sent to them.
Yeah. I have a friend who interacted on the internet with someone famous in the Hollywood world, and she said like he became this like entity. She's very connected with the astral plane and a part of this kind of spiritual war that's happening, and she said that, you know, she had this negative experience with this astral version, the soul of this famous person presenting himself, and he wouldn't leave her presence at night. It was very scary.
Oh, wow.
And threatening.
Yeah. That's why it's like mediumship and like working with other spirits. It's a dangerous game. You never really know who's coming through. Most, you know, when we do spirit release in hypnotherapy, which is like entity removal, they all say this similar stuff. They're all Satan, they're all evil, they all want to kill you, they all want to destroy you. And you never know who they are or what they are or really where they you cannot trust that at all.
Yeah.
You cannot trust anything that comes out of that comes through that. So, you know, for me, being the hypnotherapist who actually draws that out of people, I try not to provoke it in any way. I actually try to get it to remember that it's still part of the same source that we're part of, and to return to the light that it came from.
Interesting.
Rather than, you know, cursing it out or something. You know, you don't want to fuck with it, obviously. Right. You know, because, I mean, what is a light worker? A light worker is someone who brings light to others, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's what we have to do to these entities too. We have to bring light to them.
Yeah.
We can't discriminate, right? So even if I have people who come to me for healing and I know that they're not doing the most ethical things with their life, I'm still bringing light to them. That's the cure.
Right.
But, you know, a lot of people who are so-called shamans on the internet, maybe they're not working in that capacity, you know? Maybe they think that they're going to heal somebody with their ego. Like, I'm going to change you.
Right.
You know, I'm going to change you the way that I envision you. That's very dangerous.
Yeah.
That's control. That's the opposite of love. And that's going to draw negative spirits to that person. It's going to call out two negative entities, because they're going to be like, oh, this person is willing to do our bidding for us.
Right.
So these
they will sign a contract with us.
Yeah. So these are not embodied beings. They're non-physical.
Right.
They're astral beings, and they work through human beings who are susceptible to it. Everyone has entities. Everyone.
Right. I was reading a book recently that, you know, talks about tries to lead you towards a path in which you can achieve ascension through your soul and reach a higher vibrational state. You know, be more in touch with pure oneness. The book is called Oneness, actually, and in it they discuss about how, you know, in the same way that you are seeking to attain this higher version of yourself, there are lower versions of yourself, entities, lower shadow pieces of yourself that are trying to integrate with you. You are the higher person to them.
Right.
And when you have negative emotions or you're placed in negative situations, this is those entities or sides of you's ways of expressing themselves and trying to integrate. So each time you block out your emotions or avoid situations, numb yourself with drugs or whatever it be, you're preventing those lower aspects of yourself from integrating into you, which is necessary for you to become whole, such that you can ascend to the next level yourself.
Right.
So there's this shadow work that is dependent on confronting those, whether there are other entities or pieces of yourself that are uncomfortable.
Yeah, in hypnotherapy, that would be like parts integration therapy. So we're taking these different fragmented parts of yourself and we're uniting them in some way into the fully healed version of yourself. There could also be ancestors too, like ancestors that need healing that are in your auric field. They're like part of your aura, and they need healing, and they may be animating you in a certain way that maybe it comes out as like a bad habit or something like that, and it's just your ancestor. So you have to do that ancestral healing in order to like prevent that from happening anymore. And how do we do that? We bring light to that ancestor or to that version of yourself. Light is medicine. And you could even see now with cancer treatments, right? What are they doing? They're using photonic light particles and light beams and lasers and stuff like that.
Yeah, laser therapy is effective.
I'm excited
for many
about that.
things. Inflammation, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Everything that exists as matter has radiation, is radiating energy. The things that you are seeing with your eyes are emitting a visible spectrum of electromagnetic radiation that you perceive as colors.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why radiation therapy is both, you can have radiation poisoning from holding a block of uranium, or you can go and get radiation therapy to treat cancer.
Right.
If it's so, the ways in which radiation of matter is expressed matter very much.
So one of the most ancient Kabbalistic texts, what do you think the name is?
Yade?
No, it's the Book of Radiance. The Zohar. The Zohar is the Book of Radiance. So it's a teaching of how things radiate.
Wow.
In a way, I mean, obviously, there's a lot more to it.
I was looking up information on the Zohar on the internet, and this just could be my Google avenue it's put me in, but I couldn't find anything.
No, you can't.
I was like, what is this about?
No. It's also in code, so you can't really.
Right.
You have to be trained. You have to be trained by Kabbalists in order to read it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the Bible also has codes written into it that you can read if you're trained to read the code, or you can just read it in its language format.
They call it a language of roots and branches. So, for instance, like Egypt is the earth, and Israel is the upper world, right? Like concealment is like a spiritual lesson, right? There's all these different Kabbalistic terms. So,
what would be concealment?
Concealment is when you're in a let's say everything's going well, you're living your life, but there's a spiritual lesson you need to learn. So the Creator conceals the light from you temporarily. So you're in this dark state,
right?
And you have to suffer and go through whatever you're going through until you turn to the Creator again. And you recognize that this is just a lesson. And you submit to it, and you say, I'm fully surrendering to this lesson, in a way where you're actually like speeding that process up. And then the light comes back and things are okay again. We go through this constantly. It is a constant process of our own soul evolution to go through that.
Wow.
And that's what concealment is.
I find it interesting through some of the groups I'm involved in, and religion and this philosophy you're talking about, there's this important value in surrender, which seems as though it, in some ways, it's giving in, but you are surrendering to the natural process of that unconcealment, declassification of light.
Well, it's really it's really surrendering the ego.
Right, and it's difficult for us to naturally, I think, pursue that avenue
I did an 1.5-hour session the other day with this guy, and it was just all about him needing to surrender. And after an 1.5 hours of him putting me through the worst mental gymnastics I've been through in a long time, I finally got this guy to surrender.
Hey.
And for him to realize what he was doing to himself. And he cried, you know, and he needed to cry.
How did you achieve that realization?
How did I arrive to?
Did you help him to come to that realization? Yeah.
It was very complicated. He needed to see that he's no longer a child. He needed to see that he's an adult. You spoke about this with me the other day. This exact instance, yeah. Yeah, he was acting from a place of a defiant, spoiled child, and he didn't want that experience to ever end, because that gave him the ability to basically like get away with doing bad things to himself, really.
Wow.
But he needed to see that he was the only one doing these things to himself, that he's the only one enjoying these stories, that they're actually not good stories at all. They're just stories of really negative things that he's doing.
Right.
And that it's time to grow up. And he cried, and he hugged me afterwards. He needed to do that.
Wow.
And he needed to see that the thing that he feared the most is actually what's happening to him right now. So it was pretty heavy.
Well, we form these identities throughout our life. You know, each experience, traumatic or beneficial, adds a layer around us, and we see the world through that lens now, and we get different, further and further conjecture of who we are as we develop, and we develop this identity which we kind of become attached to. One of my older spiritual guides directed me to this amazing book, the Book of Not Knowing, which the main motif of it is that you try to exist in this state of not knowing so that you can allow information and data to inform you of truth without any of those lenses informing you with biases. So you can peel away these false layers of yourself. You know, you might think that you don't get along with your coworkers, and so you act in a certain way. But you go in and you exist in a state of not knowing, you realize everybody really interacts with you pretty normally. And you can peel away that layer of false conjecture. And the more and more you exist in this state of not knowing, the closer you can get to that infinite being, all loving when you were born. And so to have a stance of not knowing is important in the spiritual pursuit.
Yeah, I think it's like beginner's mindset, right?
Yeah.
Having this beginner's mind, I mean, you could probably think about situations in your life where you were able to achieve things that you probably are having trouble achieving now because you didn't have all of those restrictions around your consciousness, because you actually knew less. Sometimes the more you know, the more restrictions you're building around yourself, right?
Totally.
So like I've seen myself, I've done this to myself with money, I've done things. I used to tell my wife, I want to make a lot of money for doing absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. And when I actually believe that, I'm not even going to lie to you. Every now and then I would get like a check from like a relative or something for like $6,000 in the mail. Or I would, I did like a fluke of a real estate deal and I made like $50,000 that I really shouldn't have made this money.
Right.
You know? And I convinced myself that that doesn't happen. And guess what? It hasn't.
Right.
So then recently I'm like, I want to go back to that mindset, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, like I've heard this through Gnostic teachings that if you can open a door, but once the door closes, you can't go through the same door again. So maybe that worked for me then. It might not work for me anymore. So now I have to open a different door.
Right.
You know? Recently, my different door has been helping people through the Word of God, through spirituality, through Kabbalah, Through being Jewish, I know like a lot of people hate us, I get it, but we are supposed to bring light to other people. That's what the Torah is. It's how to receive. Okay, well, we are receiving light in order to give it. That's how we're supposed to receive, not only receiving light for ourselves.
Right.
So, in any situation where I can bring that light, where I know it's going to really help that person, like heal something in them that maybe they were really stuck in, I'm going to do it. You know, and that's the door. It's better than money. It's better than money.
Yeah.
Right.
You go home fucking feeling like $1 million.
Yeah.
You know? But if you want to send me money, I will receive it. I've learned how to receive it. Only because it's something that we all need in life.
Yeah.
It creates freedom.
Yeah, it's,
you know, a lot of people hate
financial security is difficult, but it's similar to health in the way that when you have it, you're not so concerned about it, and as soon as you find the absence of it in your life, health or financial security, it becomes the most important thing in your life.
Yeah, I don't think it should be the most important thing.
Or, you know, it becomes extremely prevalent.
Right.
If you're not sick and then all of a sudden you have this debilitating disease, that's going to inform a huge percentage of how you operate.
Yeah, I would say health is above money.
Health is above money,
but there is such a thing as financial health, you know? Like, without proper finances, you are, in a way, unhealthy. What do you guys think about people hating billionaires? Because I noticed, like, a lot of people hate... I'm not talking about the evil ones, but let's say I was a billionaire. You know, there are going to be people out there that hate me just because of that. What do you guys think about that? Talk amongst each other, because I'm going to take a leak.
Yeah.
And then come back.
Yeah. I don't feel like I have enough perspective, considering I don't know any, honestly.
Right. It's true.
It's hard for me to say. You know, if I knew about one, my experience would probably be a lot different.
Yeah, like how can we even fathom what it's like to have a billionaire's life?
Yeah.
You know, they exist in like an entirely different set of rules.
Totally.
You can have the money to acquire anything that money can buy, and when you're a billionaire, you have power that comes along with it, where you can attain things that not only money can buy, but status can buy.
Right.
And you're free to operate in, I think, this way, which is just like inconceivable to us serfs, you know?
It's also really important. Like, it's a big responsibility, honestly. Like, you can't just get a whole bunch of depreciating assets and just, like, you know what I mean? Just live like that. You have to really know where to put it. Like, there has to, or else you're not going to end up a billionaire anymore, you know? So it's very important to invest in the right places. Like, it really is just energy, and if you funnel it in the wrong places, you're just going to end up, you know, worse off than when you first started.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it's interesting to look in it in terms of energy source. You can imply that money and wealth is a form of energy.
Yeah,
you know, it allows you to incite energy. You can literally buy energy from, you know, the energy from the utility company if you have more money. Money gives you access to energy, and so it allows billionaires to energetically operate differently by a different set of rules than the rest of the world. And I've heard an interesting statistic that I'm not even going to try. You might be able to look it up right now. But the difference between 1 million and 1 billion, like, it's hard for us to conceive because we talk about billionaires a lot, and a millionaire is like almost attainable for a lot of Americans now.
Sure.
But 1 million seconds is, I don't know, something like within a week's amount of time. 1 billion seconds is on like the tens of years, something like that. I might be way off, but it is vastly different, the wealth between a millionaire and a billionaire. It's $1,000 million.
Yeah.
It's a lot of millions to get.
It's a big jump, yeah. So
it's also things probably mean something different to a billionaire. You know what I mean? Like, what do things even mean at that point? It's almost just like, it's interchangeable. Like, for us, it's like you get something and it's like, oh, I bought this, like, you know, I need this thing.
Right.
For them, it's just like next thing, you know what I mean? It's like it's almost like things just have a whole different. At least I would imagine that things would have a whole different meaning. You know, new car. You know?
Right. It's almost
For
hard
me,
to
it's
assign
like,
value to it because you can just attain whatever you want. So all of it is less valuable in some way. You know.
Right.
So my thought is that there's a big aspect of this is envy. And I looked this up because it's a state, it's a spiritual state. Envy is actually a spiritual state. Remember when we talked about shame and like nobody showed up because they thought shame was going to be like this horrible thing?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, actually, shame is a
few people show up for that one.
Yeah.
There was like 5 people.
But I don't think people were expecting shame to be a spiritual state, right?
Right.
Well, envy is also a spiritual state, and there are 2 sides to envy. There's destructive, and then there's holy. But I'm going to just read the summary. The final thought. The Baal Shem Tov, founder of Hasidic Kabbalah, taught that what we see in others is a reflection of our inner world. If envy arises, it is an opportunity to ask, what part of me is yearning for growth? By transforming envy from a destructive force into a catalyst for spiritual elevation, we align ourselves with divine wisdom and infinite abundance. So a lot of people are stuck in envy when it comes to billionaires. They're envious of what they have, and they assume that they're all evil. Mm-hmm. But what that state is really requiring is for you to ask, I want to grow, and why aren't I able to grow right now? You know, what is it about me that's holding myself back from growth? And who can we ask to help us grow? You know, we have to ask God.
Right.
People are too reliant on asking themselves for stuff.
Yeah.
We have no answers.
One of my more recent ways of just getting back into praying is literally just in the morning, hitting my knees to the ground and asking God to direct my thoughts. And I know it's a potent means of moving forward, but I hit this roadblock sometimes when I start overthinking it, and I'm wondering, is that God's direction or is that my own egoic thought? As soon as you start overthinking it, it becomes real problematic. It's like chicken or the egg situation. You can't find it.
Yeah, it's that's an interesting thing to think about. So, like, that's just the ego jumping in. You know, you have the higher self and the little self, right? Mm-hmm. And God doesn't directly talk to you in a way. God shows you things through actions, right?
Right, and people too.
Yeah, and through others. So you could feel the Creator through interactions with other people and interactions with nature and your environment and things that come into your awareness. Just like how, you know, that guy I was telling you about, our friend's dad died and his name was Steve-O, and the day before I took a picture of a license plate that said DJ Steve-O. Right. You know, was that a message? I think so. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it was a message, and these messages are all over the place. And where are they coming from? They're coming from the Creator. You know, some people get very obsessed with like numbers. They're like, oh, look, it's 11:11.
Yeah.
But it's 11:11 twice a day, every day, and you know where to find it. You know, so I don't know. If you were to see like 2 clouds that look like 11:11, maybe that would be a little bit different. You know, like so. But we also have to have discernment.
Only 5 times a day, and every single day you're saying 11:11 twice for like 10 weeks in a row.
Right.
Something's going on.
That's definitely something. I would say that that's more something than nothing.
Right.
Like if I barely ever look at the clock, and then when I look at it, it's 2:22.
Right.
Like every day for a week, I'm gonna look up 2:22 and look what is the significance of that.
Yeah.
What is the meaning behind those numbers? All numbers have more meaning than we realize. They have a lot of meaning, actually.
Numerology has always been an interesting concept for me, and I enjoy the fabric of nature way in which numerology exists. You know, I think math was discovered, not invented. It exists. It's this description of the nature of our universe, and numerology attempts to tie the patterns together. But I think it becomes problematic in the ways in which it tries to define dates, because we operate from a year in which Christ was born. That's when we decide year zero is, and I'm not sure that is a part of nature that is inherent to the system. You know what I mean? That was an arbitrary date, kind of, that we picked for zero to start. And so, does the year in which numerology, does that really mean something? I don't know. I have trouble working with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an alternate timeline based off of like a totally different stream of consciousness that is kind of, you know, there's control, there's some control aspect to it too. You know, there's some. I don't want to only go into the negatives, you know,
right.
because it's also somebody's religion and their beliefs and everything.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a way to say that everything you've known before this time is no longer true, and from this time forward, everything that we're going to teach you is the truth, right? So,
right.
You know, take that for what it is. You
right.
know, like the Hebrew year is different. It's like 56 something. I don't know. I don't really remember.
Right. So then would, you know, if you're interpreting numerology from the Hebrew year versus the Christian year, don't you think your birth date numerologically should result in the same answer, whether you're viewing one date or another? You know, that's where it becomes feels arbitrary.
It's similar to different like types of astrology. Like there's Placidus, there's whole sign, there's
right.
Vedic. So a lot of that has to do with consciousness, right? There's many millions of people believe in Placidus. Many millions of people believe in Vedic, and both are true. Because we are creating our reality through our own map of reality.
Right.
So if on my map of reality Vedic astrology is true, then it's true for me. You know, and this is like a subjective truth.
Right.
So there are subjective truths.
Yeah, I posed this question to someone else and he said, well, that arbitrary date isn't arbitrary. It happened as a part of the natural expansion of the universe. Like we assigned that date as a part of how our consciousness was interacting with the world at that time. And so, like, sort of how I was asking, at what point does technology become natural? This is the same sort of expansion. You know, it was that arbitrary date of zero is kind of a natural thing that happened, even though we assign it as like a human assigned date. That human expression of that date was a natural thing that happened, so it is still within the envelope of numerology.
Well, December 21st, 2012, there was definitely a leap in consciousness.
I completely agree.
A lot of people thought the whole world was going to end and we were all going to ascend into a higher dimension, and that didn't happen. And then a lot of those YouTube channels went away.
Right.
But there was a shift in consciousness, and it was really when Saturn went into Pisces.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Saturn went into Pisces. I know Saturn's in Pisces now. I don't know if it's been in Pisces since 2012. Yeah, I gotta really think about that. Oh, Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces, right? Yes. I'm sorry, not Saturn. When Neptune went into Pisces, that was 2012. Neptune is about to go into Aries in 2025. That is going to completely change the whole spiritual movement.
What traits and characteristics does Neptune represent, and what would be the difference between existing in Pisces versus Aries?
So Neptune is at home in Pisces. Neptune basically like governs or rules Pisces. Okay. And Neptune is the planet of dreams and spirituality.
Okay.
So Aries is more of individuality. It's the first sign. It is kind of like beginner's mind. A lot of Aries actually have very good luck because they utilize beginner's mind, but it's a more self-centered energy, right? It's also a little bit more fiery because it's a fire sign, right? Pisces is a water sign. It's very emotional. When people are in touch with their emotions, they seek spirituality. fire, maybe people might be more interested in like magic, or maybe they might be more interested in self-development, something like that. But it might be more in alignment with dreams and spirituality because it's Neptune that's going to be, in Aries. But it is going to be a drastic shift in energy. People are going to feel very different within a year of that transit, just like 2012.
And so 2012 was the last time that Neptune transferred.
Yeah.
It was in what sign before Pisces?
Aquarius.
Okay.
Yeah, so now it's going into Aries.
Interesting. I always found it interesting that 2012 was the year that the Large Hadron Collider had enough information to basically prove the existence of the Higgs boson particle.
Yeah.
Which demonstrates that there is no space, it provides mass to everything. So we literally are all connected in one thing, which that shift in intelligence, or a shift in perspective rather, can change spiritual views in a strong way.
Yeah, or vice versa. We're these spiritual views that was the spiritual aspect of Neptune and Pisces something that gave rise to discovering something about our universe that was once just a dream, and now it's a reality. Right? It was dreamed up. It was just a thought, and Neptune helped bring it into the actual reality. Like when somebody is between the ages of 41 and 44, the position of where Neptune was when they were born, they call that your natal Neptune, it creates an aspect which is called a square with the position of Neptune currently, right? So it's called Neptune squaring your natal Neptune. That's when people go through a midlife crisis where everything that they thought was true may crumble and fall apart, and now new, more beneficial truths. They're beneficial in a way that they're more true to who you are meant to be. Those arise, right? So there's a falling away of the old self, and then this new self, this better version, hopefully, it comes through all of the turmoil of this squaring of Neptune squaring your natal Neptune. So they call it a midlife crisis. It's probably the hardest time of people's lives.
Wow, 41 to 44?
Yeah, I'm out of it, baby. 44. I just went through that, and I went through a lot of shit.
Wow,
a lot of shit. And you know what? I'm kinder, more compassionate, more understanding, more patient, definitely more handsome. My hair is a lot more gray. But, I went through that, man, and it was heavy. So buckle up. Right. If anyone out there is about to turn 41, buckle up. You might need to lawyer up too. A lot of shit is gonna happen.
Lawyer
up, baby.
Damn.
Yeah, funny, people go through breakups, divorces, they buy cars, they buy houses, they go bankrupt, their business might fail, they may change careers. Like all of that steady, firm foundation just crumbles, falls apart.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so funny because, like, the way me and you talk to each other, it's like you'd think you were, like, the same age as me. I'm literally 29.
I know.
29? Yeah.
But I'm very
wise beyond your years, my friend.
I'm kind of immature, I like to have fun.
Yeah, the way we talk is, like, hilarious.
Well, also, younger people are smarter than older people, clearly. Like, my son's generation, like, my son could be my therapist. He's so grounded and patient and, intelligent in a different way. He might not, know all of the crap that I know, but he doesn't even have to. He's just, he's emotionally intelligent. So I think younger people are a little more emotionally intelligent. So it's good. It's good to have younger friends. It's good to have older friends.
I think in some way of coming full circle, it's really exciting and beautiful that we have this new generation that is coming into the world with such open minds and knowledge, and maybe they will have the capacity to shift this world in the right direction. With all of the problems we seem to be facing and all of the drastic changes, I think this next generation has the capacity to be a very incite some beautiful things in our world.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I know they will. They will. And about also another thing about friends is it's also really good to have male friends. If you are a male, you have to have close male friends. And I think that has been, like, I think there's a lot of male betrayal in society. Like, men will betray other men over women or over money or over popularity or over whatever.
Totally.
And it's something that I would really highly recommend, that if that is something that you're experiencing in your life, find someone who you can be best friends with, because you can't just rely on a girlfriend or a wife to fulfill you. You should actually not seek that type of fulfillment from your partner at all. You know, if you're going through difficult things, you need to bring that to your male friends and talk about it with them. Right. So you need people who aren't going to judge you, people who are going to really be there for you. So I highly recommend that to any other men out there. That's why I wanted to start that men's group, and it kind of like didn't really work out.
You know, this is the new thing.
I really like the intention of it, though, which was what you're getting at, you know?
Yeah. So you guys ready to call it a wrap?
Yeah, man. I'm so curious how long we did.
I feel like it's definitely like a 2-hour pod.
Oh, you said 2 hour and it literally just hit 2 hours.
Oh, wow. That's some shit, see?
2 hours, baby.
It just hit 2.
I think we gotta we'll have to do a part 2 to this one.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for tuning in to the Higher Dimensions podcast. Frank Paccarello, the man, the myth, the legend, the scientist.
It's an honor to be in your guys' presence and chatting about everything with you.
Where can we find you, Frank? If somebody wanted to find Frank, where would he be? Do you want to be found?
It depends on who you are, but probably would like to be found, yeah. You can find me in Shirley right now.
Yeah. In the streets of Shirley.
In the streets of Shirley.
Yeah.
I also have an apartment, but sometimes I'm in the streets of Shirley.
I just meant like if you have a website or...
I don't have a website.
Instagram or anything.
That's my Instagram handle, Smiles Piccarello. So if you could spell my last name, then you could be friends with me. How about that?
Well, we tagged it in the post on Instagram. So if you want to know more about Frank, there he is. Jackson at Jackson Paintings. If you want a sick painting.
Jackson O Paintings.
Jackson O Paintings. I left the O out.
It's an amazing artist.
Thanks, man.
The best artist in the world.
Pretty much.
So, thanks for tuning in. Higher D.
Peace out.
Peace out.